Hi, you guys. We're going to start in 3 more minutes so that others can join in.
पिंकू बिस्तर लिया पौने 9 हो रहे
कहाँ पौने 10 साढ़े 8 बजे
Hi, guys. This is Ms. Visha Hussain from iPro for F5. Now, in F5, the first thing that we need to discuss is that what is F5 about? So F5 is performance management. And you know that in performance management, we are going to discuss the different processes. We are going to discuss the manufacturing methods that a company goes through. How is the company managed internally? All of that is going to be discussed in F5. Now, the paper pattern for F5 is that there are 3 sections. Section A has 15 MCQs, 2 marks each. That totals up to 30 marks. Section B is 10 MTQs, 3 marks each. That equals up to 30 marks. And section C has 2 long questions, 20 marks each. That equals up to 40 marks. So in total, your paper is going to consist of 100 marks. Okay. Now, the course structure includes section A, modern techniques, in which we are going to discuss the new methods for costing, which includes activity-based costing, target costing, life cycle costing, throughput accounting, environmental accounting. Section B is decision making. That includes linear programming, CVP analysis, pricing, risk and uncertainty, and decision making. And section C is related to budgeting. So section C basically includes all the budgeting sections and theory and flex budgets, learning curve theory, all of that we are going to go into great detail when we actually start studying. F5. Section D is variances and section E is performance management or performance measurement, you can say. Now there's another addition in our syllabus of F5, and that addition is related to the quantitative methods. Previously, this was a part of F2. Now they have extended it to F5 as well. F2 is management accounting paper. They have now extended it to F5 as well. And we are going to be looking at that as well in great detail. However, right now, the first topic that we're going to be discussing for today is activity-based costing. But before I move on to that, do you guys have any queries in regards with the paper pattern or course structure? Once we discuss the activity-based costing, then I'm going to tell you what is my approach towards the topics and how are we going to go about in order to end the syllabus. So if there are any queries, you can ask me now. Okay, I feel there are no queries. So activity-based costing is considered to be a modern technique that is used to deal with overheads. Now, when we talk about modern techniques, the question arises then what was the older technique? So the older technique was absorption costing. Now again, the question arises that fine, absorption costing was the old technique, then why are we switching towards activity-based costing? Why is activity-based costing better than absorption costing? So if you remember from your F2 studies, that absorption costing has 4 steps. One is allocation, second is apportionment, then we used to reapportion the overhead cost, and then we used to absorb the overhead cost. The first 3 steps are not the issue. These are correct. The last step, that is your absorption, is the main issue. And why is it the issue? Because in absorption, you used to divide total overheads by a particular level of activity. Now, this level of activity could be machine hours, could be labor hours. And then you used to compute the overhead absorption rate for the company. Now, when you're choosing one level of activity, could be machine hours, could be labor hours, either of them, but you're only choosing one of them, right? So you're basically making an assumption at the back of your mind that my whole company and its overheads are being incurred because of machine hours, or they're being incurred because of labor hours. And this assumption is a very unrealistic assumption. Why? Because when you're running the company, it's not as if your company is running on robots only and on machines only, that all the overheads are being incurred because of the machine hours. No. Neither is the situation such that your company is only running on human resources, which is why all the overheads are being incurred because of labor hours. No such situation is occurring, right? Your company happens to be working through machine hours as well as labor hours, because machines are also involved and labor is also involved. And when machine and labor both are involved, then the total overheads should be incurred because of both of them, right? All clear up till now? Is the assumption clear, you guys? If yes, give me a thumbs up. Now, since I mentioned that your company either runs on, basically it runs on a mixture of both. But absorption costing assumes that you're either running the company over machine hours or labor hours. So again, the same thing that I mentioned previously, that an unrealistic assumption arises, which is why whatever overhead absorption rate you're computing is also very unrealistic. And since it is unrealistic, that is where the issue arises. Let's say if I talk about a company, they have their marketing overheads as $1,000, and there are two products, product A and product B. Now they have given you machine hours, but you know that in your company the marketing overheads are being incurred because of labor mostly. So let's say that there are machine hours, they have given you 150 for A and they have given you 100 for B. So the total machine hours would be 250. Right now, if you're absorbing your overheads over machine hours, this becomes a very unrealistic approach because your marketing department is based on labor. Now, because your marketing department is based on labor, any overhead being incurred on marketing department should also be because of labor. Then why are you absorbing it over machine hours? Unrealistic assumption occurs, right? Which is why the answer is also unrealistic. The overhead absorption rate that you're computing is also unreal. Now, when you're going to apply this overhead absorption rate onto the product, again, the amount of overheads that you're trying to absorb is going to be unfair. The allocation of the overheads is going to be unfair because first thing is that this allocation should be based on labor hours and not on machine hours. Okay, are we clear about this? Please give me a thumbs up, only then will I move on. Otherwise, if you guys have any queries, please ask me now. Feel free to ask. Olin, Sanjay, Shankari, Husam, Windy, VC, all, everybody is clear?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Now, I've already told you the disadvantage of absorption costing, which is an advantage for ABC, which is why we are following ABC nowadays and we are trying to avoid absorption costing. ABC says that first of all, you don't have to total the overheads. Why? Because every department has different kind of work being done. Let's say marketing overheads were being incurred because of labor hours. Why? Because labor was working in the marketing department. Similarly, finance department was also working through labor, which is why their overheads are also being majorly incurred because of labor hours. Production department, however, mostly has machines involved. So production department is something that should be dealt with machine hours. So first thing that absorption was doing wrong was that it was totaling the overheads of all the departments and it was computing it as total overheads for the company. And then it was dividing it by only one level of activity. So ABC says that this is wrong. First of all, avoid totality and move towards making cost pools. Now, what are cost pools? Let's say if there is marketing overhead because of the marketing department, then this marketing overhead, which I am writing as MOH in the short form, is one cost pool. Production department overhead becomes second cost pool. Financing department overheads becomes third cost pool. Now for each of them, select a suitable cost driver. What is a cost driver? The reason why the cost arises. So, which means the level of activity basically. So, as per my example, I told you that labor hours was the one which was being used mostly in marketing overhead or marketing department, which is why labor hours becomes the suitable cost driver. Similarly, for financing overheads, labor hours was the one that I mentioned. But for production overheads, I told you that machine hours is the suitable cost driver because machines are the ones that are being used mostly in production. Now you are going to divide your cost pools cost, that is your marketing overhead divided by labor hours, production overhead divided by machine hours, financing overhead divided by labor hours. And you're going to get a particular rate per labor hour, per machine hour, and again per labor hour. Use these rates to multiply it by the products or the product units to charge these overheads onto the product separately, the way absorption used to do. Now, the major difference is that absorption used to total the overheads. We are not totaling it in ABC. Absorption used to divide it by one level of activity. We are not dividing it by one level of activity. For each cost pool, we have a separate cost driver. Third thing, absorption had only one overhead absorption rate because of the totality concept. But over here, we are charging different overhead absorption rates based on the number of cost pools we have. Are we clear?
Yes.
Okay. Now we're going to move towards an example. Just give me 1 minute. I'll open it up. We're going to look towards that so that you get a better idea about how to go about ABC. I hope you guys can see the question on the left side. Now the question says that suppose that Coupland manufactures 4 products, W, X, Y, and Z. Output and cost data for the period just ended are as follows. They have mentioned that there is W, X, Y, and Z. These are your products. Output units are 10, 10, 100, and 100. Number of production runs in the period are 2, 2, 5, and 5. I'll explain what production runs are in a bit. Material cost per unit is $20 for W, $80 for X, $20 for Y, and $80 for Z. Direct labor hours per unit are 1 for W, 3 for X, 1 for Y, and 3 for Z. Similarly, machine hours per unit are the same for W, X, Y, and Z. Now they're saying that direct labor cost per hour is $5. Overhead costs are as follows. And they have given you separate cost pools. If you see overhead, they have actually given you separate cost pools and they have also totaled it. The overheads are being totaled over here. And these are separate cost pools that they have named: short run variable cost, setup cost, production and scheduling cost, materials handling cost. They want you to perform both absorption costing and ABC costing. First thing that you need to understand is that you are going to, first of all, work on absorption costing. And for absorption costing, you need to remember the main concepts of absorption costing, which were that you used to total your overheads. right? Now, since you used to total your overheads, 30,800 is given over here. Divide it either by total machine hours or total labor hours, because in this question they haven't given you what basis you should be using. So you can use either of them. It won't make a difference, because when you end up computing total labor hours and when you end up computing total machine hours, it is going to be the same. How will you compute it? W, X, Y, and Z. So even the machine hours and even the labor hours, it was 1. And what was the amount of units? 10. So this becomes 10. 3 into 10 becomes 30. 1 into 100 becomes 100. And 3 into 100 becomes 300. It's the same for both of them. If you guys have any confusion, please ask me right now. When you add them together, you come up to 440 machine hours or labor hours, whichever you want to use. I am using machine hours. Okay. In this question, I am using machine hours. So now that you have computed the total machine hours for the company divided by the overheads, the total overheads were 30,800 divided by 440 machine hours, you will end up with $70 per machine hour. Is everybody clear about the overhead absorption rate computation?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So good.
All right, perfect. Now, let's get back to the very basics of absorption costing. When we study absorption costing or ABC costing, initially when we study ABC costing's definition, it clearly mentioned that this costing method is used to deal with overheads only. It did not mention material cost, it did not mention labor cost. It only mentioned overheads. So in absorption costing and in ABC, the only difference is in the computation of overheads. Other than that, material and labor has a standard way of being computed. And in both the formats, material and labor will have the same answer. So once you have computed material and labor cost for absorption costing, you can just copy paste it down to activity-based costing as well to save your time. Because your paper will be based on Excel. So you can just copy paste or you can just select the cell and get your work done. Okay. Now let's first compute the material cost. If you see over here, I'm muting the mic, you guys. If you have any confusion, you can ask me then so that there's no disturbance from back end. Now, when it comes to material cost per unit was given to you. Simply multiply it by the amount of units because it was material cost per unit. When it says per unit, so when you want to come towards the total, you need to multiply it by the amount of units only, so that you can get the total of it. Okay, so 20 into 10, then we have 80 into 10, then we have 20 into 100, and then we have 80 into 100. Any confusion in material cost?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Sorry, can I ask?
Yeah, sure.
Does the question want us to calculate cost per unit, or it wants us to calculate for the total number of units?
See, because this is a very short example, it does not mention anything, which is why I am going to just move towards total cost, but I'm also going to tell you how to compute the cost per unit so that you
Thank
know
you.
both of them. Okay.
Thank you.
No problem. Now, when it comes to labor cost, again, the labor cost format is also very easy. How are you going to go about it? The labor hours per unit was given to you, and even the labor cost per hour was given to you. So all you need to do is, let's talk about W. The labor hours were 1 per unit. So I told you when you want to compute the total, you need to multiply it by the units. This would give you 10 hours for W. But what is the cost? In order to get the cost, you need to multiply it by the cost per hour. and the cost per hour is $5. So 10 hours were being used for W multiplied by $5 per hour, you will get $50 as your cost. Over here, if you see, that is what we have computed. Similarly, for X, 3 into 10 into 5. For Y, 1 into 100 into 5. And then for Z, 3 into 100 into 5. That is what I have done over here as well. All clear?
Yeah, ma'am, good so far.
Okay. Now coming towards the main area, that is overheads. Yusam, they have already mentioned $5 in the question only. If you see over here, is it clear now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, perfect. Now coming towards overheads, I told you that I am using machine hours to compute my overhead absorption rate. And I have already computed that. So $70 per machine hour should be multiplied by the machine hours per unit of W. 1 hour per unit was my that was my machine hours per unit, multiplied by the amount of units. So there were 10 output units for W. This is the working for W that I'm doing. So 70 into 1 gives you 70 only. And then 70 into 10 gives you $700. So if you see over here, I've done the same. Now for X, 3 was your machine hours per unit. Multiplied by 10 were the output units. Multiplied by 70, that was your overhead absorption rate. So 3 into 10 becomes 30. 30 into 70 becomes 2100. Then for Y, 1 hour into 100 units into $70 per machine hour. This would give you 7,000. And for Z, 3 into 100 into 70. That would give you 21,000. Are we clear?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Should I move towards ABC? But before I move towards ABC, if you see when you're going to add the total cost means material, labor, and overheads. You're going to get 950, 3050, 9500, and 30,500. Now this is your total cost. In order to get the cost per unit, all you need to do is divide this total cost by the amount of units. So I'm doing it over here in red. For W, our total cost was 950 divided by 10. So $95 per unit becomes your cost per unit. Similarly, for X, 3050 divided by 10. So $305 per unit becomes your cost per unit.
You are dividing by output units, right?
Yes, output units only.
Okay, okay.
Then for Y, 9500 divided by 100 would give you 95. And for Z, it is going to be 30,500 divided by 100. So that would be 305. All clear?
Yes, ma'am.
If you guys have any confusions, you may ask right now so that we can move towards ABC.
Ma'am, like where did we end the questions? We ended at 7 per machine hour, or
No,
where
no,
did
no.
we end?
The question ends at total cost. Or if the requirement asks you cost per unit, then the question ends at that point. This is just the working that have been done below.
Okay. So
Clear?
we ended this question at total cost, right?
Yes, yes. Let
Okay.
me write it as working so that we do not get confused in
Oh,
that.
sure, sure.
Okay. And this is working number 2 because this basically shows the working of 440 machine hours. Should I move towards ABC now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now in ABC, I've told you that materials and labor will be computed in the same manner as done previously. There is no change. So just copy the answers of material and labor as it is. But when it comes to your your overheads absorption rate, in that case, you are going to make cost pools and you're going to choose a suitable cost driver for it in order to then compute the OAR for each of the cost pool. So just give me 1 minute and then we'll move towards the computation of it. All right. Now, there are four cost pools that they have given to us. What are those cost pools? Short run variable cost, setup costs, production and scheduling costs, and materials handling cost. All you need to do is you just need to get a suitable cost driver for them. So how are you going to choose the suitable cost driver? I told you that I'm going to explain production run to you. Now is the time when I do that. Production run is basically when you start production, and let's say that your machine is such that in one go it is going to produce 100 units. Okay. So once you start the machinery, it produces 100 units and then it stops. That is one production run. Then you restart it and then it produces 100 units and then it stops. That is second production run. Then similarly, you start it the third time, then it works as per capacity and then it stops. This is a third production run. Are we clear about production run?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Ma'am, please come again.
When you start the machinery to produce a certain amount of items, so from start till end, let's say you start the machinery, it produces 100 units and then it stops. This is one production run. Then you're going to restart the machinery to produce more units. Then it is going to stop. That is two production runs. Okay.
All right, thanks.
No problem. Now, um, the short run variable cost was 3080. I am just writing it as I am just writing it as VC. The basis that I'm going to use for it is machine hours. Why? Because previously in absorption costing, I took the assumption that majority of my overheads are being incurred because of machine hours, which is why I used um, the machine hours in order to compute the overhead absorption rate, right? So basically, I made an assumption at that point, right? That majority of my overheads or most of my overheads were being incurred because of machine hours. So I'm continuing with that assumption only over here. Are we clear?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. So I'm going to divide 3080 by 440 machine hours. Can you guys tell me what is the amount that we're getting? $7 per machine. Perfect, Raj. Thank you. Now setup cost. Setup cost is based on number of production runs. Why? Because you initially set up a machinery. You initially set up all the resources that are going to be used in a machinery. And why do you do that? Because the machine is about to run. So once the machine is run, it is going to use all those resources and then it is going to stop. Then you'll have to reset up the machine and then it is going to again utilize all those resources and then it is going to stop. So all the setup costs are being incurred because the machine has to run, right? Which is why the reason becomes the production runs. Are we clear?
Is it kind of installation cost or is it
No.
or it's something other?
See, when the machine is about to start production, you have to bring in raw materials, you have to bring in, you need to make sure that the electricity supply is fine, you need to get the labor ready, everything, right? So all of that is setup cost, right? Even you have to put in the fuel, you need to check whether the machine is perfectly fine, is it in runnable condition or not? All of those are setup costs. Okay.
Okay, ma'am. Okay.
So those are being incurred because of production runs only. Now these are number of production runs in the period, which means they're already in total. They are not per unit. So simply just divide 10920 by 14 because the total number of production runs are 14. So that this becomes 780 per production run.
780.
Similarly, production and scheduling cost. You're going to bring the raw materials from the warehouse as per the requirement when it is needed to be used in the production run. You're going to say that, okay, I am planning to produce this much amount of units. So only those amount of units are going to be brought in for production. Only those amount of raw materials are going to be brought in for production, right? So that is also related to production run. So for that 9100 divided by 780, sorry, not 780, 14, my bad. This becomes 650 per production run. Similarly, materials handling cost. The production department asks the warehouse department or the stores department to send in raw materials for production. So transferring the raw materials from stores department to the production department and then taking care of it throughout in order to make sure that the raw materials condition does not deteriorate so that they can be properly used in production is also related to number of production runs only, which is why you're going to divide it by 14 only and that gives you 7700 divided by 14, that would be 550 per production run. I've already done all the workings on the right side, but I'm redoing it for you guys so that you understand step by step how are we going. Any confusion so far, you guys? Anything, even slightest confusion, I do not mind. I'm here to clear the queries and confusions out. So don't hesitate. Don't feel that this is not the right question to ask or something. Just ask.
Hi, ma'am. Ma'am,
Yeah.
in production and scheduling cost,
Yeah.
you divide it by 14, like
Yeah.
it's number of production runs.
Yeah.
And similarly, you divide it by 14 in material handling cost. Like,
Yeah.
why is it so? Why, like, you divide it by 14? Why is it so?
Because your cost, these costs, all three of them are related to production and only. When you are planning to start production and when you're actually starting production. So all of these costs are incurred at that time. Production and scheduling cost means that you're scheduling your production, you're scheduling the tasks of production and all. So any cost that is incurred during that is basically being incurred because you're starting production, right?
Yeah.
So, which is why we are using production runs. Because once you start the production, so for that you need to prepare yourself beforehand. Once you start production, it is going to produce a given amount of units, then it is going to stop. Then you'll again incur all these costs because you would have to bring in the material from the stores department to the production department. Then you'll have to set up the machinery, you'll have to check the machinery. If it requires maintenance, you'll have to do that. If you require more labor for handling the machinery, you'll schedule the labor, you'll schedule any other resources that you require during that time. So all of these costs are basically being incurred just because you're starting production, and that relates to production runs only. Okay, makes sense?
Yeah, ma'am. Thanks.
No problem. Now, coming towards how you're going to apply it over the products. So we have four overhead absorption rates that we have generated over here. One is your $7 per machine hour. Second is $780 per production run. Then we have $650 per production run, and then we have $550 per production run. So if you see over here, in this area, I have computed it for Y, just for Y. I am going to show you the workings for Y. I'll make you understand it. Then I want you guys to try and check it for X, W, and Z, and tell me if anywhere you find any confusion. So $7 per machine hour was the variable short-run variable costs overhead absorption rate, right? Multiply that by 1 machine hours per unit and multiply that by 1 machine hours per unit and multiply that by 100 units of Y. So you will come up with 700. Similarly, setup cost, the overhead absorption rate was 780 per production run. And for Y, how many production runs were being used? 5. So 780 into 5 gives you 3900. Then 650 into 5 gives you 3250. And 550 into 5 gives you 2750. Any confusion so far? Is everybody clear about this? If yes, I want you guys to try it out for W, X, and Z, and then tell me if you feel there's any confusion. Okay, Farhan says absorption costing method was arbitrary allocation of overheads, but ABC will allocate based on the resources and will allocate more cost to the product which consumes output. Farhan, ABC will allocate it in a better way, not based on resources. It is going to allocate it based on cost drivers only or level of activity only. But the only difference is the allocation is way better in ABC because you're not totaling your overheads. You're individually treating your overheads. Okay. And it is not very necessary that it is going to allocate more cost to the product. It may or it may not. Depends on the situation. I'm giving you guys time to do your computations and check the answers that are already written over here. Let me scroll it up so that you can see the answers for W, X, and Z. What's up, you guys?
Give me 5 minutes.
Sure. Now, in the meanwhile, as you guys are discussing, as you guys are checking the calculations, I want to discuss that what is going to be my approach for F5 or for any other paper that I teach. My approach is such that we first discuss the concepts of the topics. Once we have discussed the concepts of the topics, then we move towards smaller examples like the one we have done right now. And after that, we practice past paper questions. Now, by past paper questions, I do not mean kit questions. A lot of questions that we do are already in the kit, yes, but I make the students practice old past papers mostly. Old past papers are done so that the difficult questions you can try it out with me and you can gain confidence over it. Once you've gained confidence over these longer questions, the older ones, you can easily do the kit questions on your own. But by the end of each topic, you'll realize that a lot of kit questions we have already covered up through those past paper questions only. That is my approach. Also, we do Excel practice. So one or two questions, I'm going to show you how to perform from each topic. One or two questions, I'm going to tell you how to perform on Excel. And then I would want you guys, whenever you plan on joining, I would want you guys to perform the questions over Excel only, so that you become expert by the time you appear for your paper. Are we clear? Is there any query? If yes, you guys can ask me right now. Otherwise, if you guys are done checking the answers and you have no queries, you can leave. All those who are still doing can stay behind, and then we're going to leave as soon as they are also done. That is about it for today. Do give your feedback to the admin of iPro, and you can ask them if you have any queries. And I'll speak to you soon if you plan on registering. Take care. Bye bye.